Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe. Very excited to welcome Marcus Gorman back to the podcast to talk about Godspell today, released in March of 1973. How are we doing, Marcus?
Prepare ye the way of the Lord.
Day by day. We have music playing. For those of you just listening, Marcus is dancing. He doesn't get to talk about musicals all the time on Film at 50, so this is a big day for Marcus.
Yes. Musicals are my thing. I love them.
You sent me an email like in December saying like, oh, here are some ideas of 1973 titles I'd love to talk to you about. And I believe there was a sentence in there somewhere like, if it's a musical, oh, come on, I'll do it.
Right.
What do you love about what do you love about musicals, Margaret?
I like them the same way I like, say, horror films or animated films. I think they're a very direct way to. Let me rethink this because that's a good question. I think they access emotion in a way that other type of cinema and theater doesn't quite do. It's a combination of several things. It's visual and sound. Right. It's emotion. It's a very entertaining way to talk about very serious subjects in a way that seems to smuggle the serious subjects in. You don't notice when something's really happy. Like, for instance, Oklahoma is a story about a town that murders somebody, but that's not what you think when you watch it. My Fair Lady, I get into arguments about this. My Fair Lady is a deeply feminist thing because she uses the tools of her oppressors against themselves. But a lot of people won't notice that beyond the really fun and lovely score. Stuff like that. Musicals, I like musicals in cinema and theater. True book musical theater is one of the few truly American art forms. Operetta certainly comes out of Europe, and there's opera and everything else, but the book musical, which starts with Showboat and then starts again with Oklahoma, is an American thing, and it does not get recognized in the way I wish it would anymore, because back in, say, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were 2-3 musicals coming out in theaters a week. Now we're lucky to get 3 or 4 a year that come out in theaters. 2021, we had like 8 to 10, but a lot of those were held back during the pandemic, for instance, including West Side Story and In the Heights and like Cinderella, stuff like that.
Right. I'm trying to think of do we have any major musical films coming in 2023? Like, I know Wicked is happening, but I don't think that'll be ready until 2024. That's
2024 and 2025. They broke it into 2 parts, which I deeply disagree with.
What?
Because I'm not the biggest fan of the play in the first place, but God bless those who love it. No, John M. Chu, who's directing it, who did In the Heights, he did Step Up 2 and 3, Now You See Me 2, G.I. Joe 2, Crazy Rich Asians. He's like, Defying Gravity, which is the end of Act 1. There's no way to come back from that without a large break. So that's where we're going to end the first movie. And we're going to add more stuff because it's based on this very big book, this very popular book. Really, Universal wants money because the Wicked spot is where Cats ended up, and that bombed for them. And then they released Year of Enhancement the following year, which was also a huge bomb. I would say for good reason. But yes, musicals are lovely. They're something you can carry along with you, and there's an earnestness to them that I think is missing from a lot of modern, certainly American art.
Yeah, I love what you had to say about, you can do a lot of things in some of these genres that you can't get away with in a straightforward drama, like in horror films, like in science fiction. You can touch on subjects, especially like at the time, maybe decades ago, but you couldn't really talk about that in just kind of a general movie. But you can explore these ideas in genre films like musicals and horror films and things. And I love musicals too. And I love discoveries like Godspell, which we're going to talk about today. I didn't know really anything about this. I try to go into some of these movies cold. Obviously, if I've seen the movie before for the podcast, I can't be like, well, I've seen it. But if it's something I don't know much about, I try to leave the research for after the movie, which I did for this. And so I just went in not knowing much. I was thinking it was like this giant spectacle, and it's not. And I was really taken with that. And I really enjoyed that about this. It took me like 20 minutes to get into its groove. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing here. It's going to be a very intimate musical, which I didn't expect. Once I really understood what the filmmakers were doing and how the story was going to play out, I got really into it.
The story, quote unquote.
The story. Yeah, the little story that we get.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the musical in 1973, I wouldn't say it's thriving, but we have some big titles around here. I mean, obviously we had Cabaret in 72, and then we have Jesus Christ Superstar later this year, which it's like the year of the Jesus musical.
Right. Well, here's the thing. This is also happening Broadway and off Broadway as well. The musical is not a big thing. I of course, our theater section at our house, the theater part of our library is upstairs in our bedroom, and I was able to go in and grab a few books. But there's a really good one that that I like called Musical Comedy in America. And they're talking about how the decade starts with a thud. In the 71 Broadway season, there's only 46 productions that open, and only 2 of those seasons, 17 new musicals, which is Godspell and a revival of No No Nanette, actually paid their own way. Musicals are notoriously expensive, and very few of them make their money back without hitting the road. So the 70s, they tried to do a lot of stuff, but 70s is considered a dark age for stage musicals. Like, we're not even talking about movie musical at this point, and we can get to that. But they were looking for new audiences. So, and they're sort of trying to look at the one successful musical of the late 60s, which is Hair. So there's like rock environmental musical, hit record album dramatized, Jewish musicals, Jesus musicals, club act musicals, country western musicals, sexual liberation, Black musicals, history musicals. But really around this decade, it's just a chorus line. End of the decade is Sweeney Todd. There's Annie, The Wiz, and then it's really a bunch of revivals. So in 1971, this show kind of comes out of nowhere, and we can get into how the show came to be, because you were saying there's not a lot of information on the film. Well, there's a reason for that. There's plenty of information on the play, and this is pretty much the play, like reshuffled a little bit, and they take out some stuff. They take out the opening part of the Tower of Babel, which is a bunch of philosophers come in and argue over each other, and then shofar, shofar, prepare ye the way of the Lord. So yes, you're saying like there's not a lot of musicals in there. Yeah, we're feeling this. So the musical, quote unquote, dies. The movie musical, quote unquote, dies in 1969 with the ostensible bomb that is Hello Dolly, which is a marvelous film. And yes, other ones happen, but the studio Hollywood musical is ostensibly dead at this point. So they're looking for anything. Godspell is did you do any research on the play itself?
No, go for it.
All right. So
I mean, I have a little bit, but you probably have way more than I do.
My wife had never seen this, but I love this. She likes Jesus Christ Superstar. I love Jesus Christ Superstar, which come out on the Broadway season the exact same year. Jesus Christ Superstar is 5 months later in 1971. And exactly 5 months, 2 years later, they're 5 months apart, the two films.
Wow,
that's how long it takes to make a movie, man. But then I told her after the film, would this surprise you that this was an MFA thesis?
Wait, the play was an MFA thesis project, like out of college?
The play is a Carnegie Mellon MFA thesis by John Michael Tebelak. And he worked with another student, and they improvised a commentary on the gospel according to St. Matthew. And it's inspired by Christ's admonition to accept his words with the openness and innocence of children. So that's why they dress that way. They're anything that suggests children, and then they sort of put the clown and hippie paint over them. The book that I'm kind of referring to doesn't like this very much. So like their choice of when to sing seems arbitrary, and it's all just kind of foolish and blandly homespun. I disagree. This is actually my favorite version of Christianity in history because it's very direct. But so then they take it off Broadway. So, and it starts off just as a play, not a musical.
Oh, okay. So the MFA version did not have songs. That was my next question.
It sort of had songs, but on the 4 books of research, which from various decades, they can't quite agree if the original had any songs. But what I can tell you is that they moved it to La Mama off Broadway. So there's Broadway, off Broadway, and off Broadway. Usually what that means is either amount of seats you can put in and contracts. The rest is kind of silly.
Okay.
And then they tried that for a while, and they had songs by other students. And then when they moved it up to off Broadway, they brought in Stephen Schwartz, another Carnegie Mellon alum, to rescore everything. So they threw out every single song except for By My Side, that lovely little lament in Act 3.
So there were songs at some point, but they all got scrapped when Schwartz came on board, mostly?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and he's a much better songwriter.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah. He's got amazing credits. He was, what did I read? He worked on Wicked, is that right?
Yes. So he has this. He has Pippin, directed by Bob Fosse. So there's a big section in the Fosse biography that became Fosse Verdon about this, because this was a huge off-Broadway hit. He did a bunch of other stuff, but then he wasn't a megastar for a while. And there's actually a whole section in one of my books, it's a Showtime by Larry Stemple. Sorry, I have it just off camera. So he had Godspell, Pippin, and The Magic Show in the early 70s. And he doesn't have a real hit again until Wicked. He has other stuff. He has Children of Eden, stuff like that. In the middle, he does Disney stuff like Hunchback and Pocahontas.
Right.
But he blames this on Broadway shifting from artistically minded producers to Broadway being run by corporations and theater owners, basically businessmen, that these people are only thinking with money. So Wicked comes around and is now, as of this year, has been running at the Gershwin Theater for 20 years. And it will be there forever. I will never go to the Gershwin because I've seen Wicked. I saw it on tour, and I don't need to see it on Broadway because I've seen it. And it's some great songs. It's not quite for me. I'm looking forward to the film, etc. But yeah, for that span in the middle, he doesn't have a whole lot. And then he moves over to Disney to take over from Howard Ashman, who Alan Menken's writing partner, who dies of AIDS when they're writing Aladdin. That's why Tim Rice takes over for that one. And then he kind of continues with Disney until they get rid of musicals, and then they bring back musicals, and it's Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Right. So he got 8 Academy Award nominations, 3 of which Steve Schwartz won. He won 2 for Pocahontas, and he won for The Prince of Egypt. When You Believe.
That, oh my God. That won the Oscar, didn't it? What a weird year.
Yeah.
I was talking about Jesus musicals yesterday, not apropos of this conversation at all, because there's a local Jesus Christ Superstar production, one of my favorite shows, that did it as modern and like video based, and we were talking about that production.
He got 2 of those. He got 3 of those weird score nominations. There were like 6 years there in the 90s where they had 2 categories. One was comedy or musical score.
I missed those.
Dramatic score. They had 2 score categories, so we got 3 in there. He also got 3 Oscar nominations in original song for Enchanted, but he didn't win. That was the year of what was Once is the one for Falling Slowly, I think. Yes,
and that is so both Enchanted, at least the first one. I don't know about the second. The first one is Menken music, Schwartz lyrics.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is shown in a non-musical form as a workshop at a Cafe La Mama off Broadway, and then they turn it into a musical. They add new songs. It runs in Greenwich Village for 3 months, and then moves to the Promenade, which is Broadway in '76, for 2,124 performances.
Wow!
Which, as of 2008, is the 4th longest running off Broadway musical. I tried looking up what the other ones were. We all know that The Fantastics is the longest running one, which has been running since 1960 and still running. And other ones, and then when
Broadway,
yes, off Broadway, it's
they have like enough people seeing it for that long.
It's a tiny theater. The Fantastics is also intentionally done with no set and limited props. So it costs nothing to do. At this point, it's a New York mainstay. The movie that Michael Ritchie made is bad. Don't watch it. It's Joey McIntyre and Joel Grey.
Okay, I never saw that. Yeah,
don't bother.
Is there anyone working on the show now that were working on it in 1960?
The songwriter Tom Jones, the different Tom Jones, I'm pretty sure is dead.
Okay.
And just had a nice
good
revival.
Long gig. You just work on that for the whole
right. Yeah.
your life.
Well, it's just like somebody on Phantom, like the person like pulling the curtain after the overture. I'm sure he's been there since 1988, and he'll finally be out of a job. But no,
Oh
when you get a
no.
gig, just stay with the gig.
Stay with the gig.
And then, so I didn't know this movie was made long before the play ever went to Broadway. It
Right.
didn't hit Broadway until 1976, where it ran for 527 performances. And at one time, there were 7 road companies through the US. This is a show where you get your actor's equity card and move on.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Because I mean it's fun, like how people just did Rent for a while. I adore Rent, but it's something, it's sort of a stepping stone you do to do something that I think actors want to do. It depends on the actor. God bless them. They would prefer to do something new. New stuff, however, is very risky. Whereas old stuff, like if you're in Rent or Hairspray, every time I open up a program and I see like a Black female performer, I look through their bio. It always says either Rent or Hairspray or both at some point in their career.
It's
one of those
something
shows
that eventually you end up doing. Like,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I wonder what happened there. I wonder why. So people start seeing it really in 71 off Broadway.
Yeah.
Like some people knew of it before then, but that's when most people were seeing it.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, we get a movie version that goes to the Cannes Film Festival. And then it takes 3 more years for it to go to Broadway. That's kind of weird to me. Why would it take that long after the movie?
Well, at this point, like it being a musical off Broadway at this time, and this is true now as it was then, off Broadway is more for short American plays. They are not really for musicals. Maybe something that on its way, like currently on Broadway, there's a show called Kimberly Akimbo, a musical by Janine Tesori and David Lindsay-Abaire that started off Broadway a couple of years ago and has moved up. But because Broadway is so business-based now, and 90% of the theaters are owned by businessmen and not artistically minded producers, that's sort of that's the journey you have to take. But also, this is not a show for Broadway. It did play in 76, and then in 2011, I missed it by a week before it opened. There was a revival with Hunter Parrish, Telly Leong, and Uzo Aduba,
cool.
Orange is the New Black. And that... that's a Diane Paulus show, I believe, who had also done Pippin, and Waitress, and the recently closed 1776 with the all female and non-binary and majority POC cast. This is not really a show for a Broadway stage. Like the thing I like about this movie is that you're pretty much watching the play. It feels like an off-Broadway movie, which is kind of what's neat about it, and it makes New York, because it's directed by a guy who's mostly done television. He doesn't David Green. He doesn't move the camera much at all except to follow them. There's no real rhyme or reason for what he does. He just sort of set it up and let it happen. The rhythm of this movie is in the editing, not the filmmaking. So you compare this to even Jesus Christ Superstar, which we'll talk about in like 5 months. That's Norman Jewison, who knows how to move the camera. Fiddler on the Roof. Fiddler on the Roof is a great musical, and it's a great movie musical because he knows what he's doing. But the fact that this is done by a TV director, it almost looks like a documentary of weirdos in an empty New York City, which I find fascinating. This is so much more interesting than a prestige musical from, say, 10 years later that is like staged within an inch of its life. This almost seems accidental, like he stumbled upon these hippie child clowns. Just like half the movie is like, oh, here's a landmark. We hear singing. Where are they? There they are.
They are.
Every time they do it, it's hilarious.
And there's what I found really fascinating in this film is that it opens in New York City and it's very vibrant and there's all these people. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of goes away except our core cast. And then I was like, by the hour mark, I'm like looking, I'm like, how are they shooting in New York City and all these big locations and there's nobody in the background? It's like the beginning of Vanilla Sky when Tom Cruise is driving through, the Times Square, and they had to shut that area down on an early Sunday morning. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's a big budget film. Like, how are they managing this? I mean, some of those long push-ins, like zoom ins across the city, and you don't see anyone. Like, how'd they do that?
Very, very carefully, probably at hours nobody wants to work.
Yeah.
And also, this is this is Nixon's 70s, and this is when we're going through a gas crisis at this point. This is licorice pizza time. So people ain't driving. I don't know. Like I have no insight. Like you said, there's really not a lot of research on this because it just kind of exists. And like there's no weird behind the scenes stories. Pretty much everybody in this was in one production or another. The guy who plays John the Baptist / Judas, he's been there since the MFA production.
Okay. And did he go on to be a part of like the 76 Broadway?
I don't think so at that point.
Okay.
I think he tried to do some other stuff.
Moved on.
He finally moved on. But yeah, like for instance, excuse me.
I did find one piece of gossip which I found interesting about the director talking about Tebelak. That's how you say it, Tebelak. So the movie's directed by David Green. In a 1972 issue of Variety, the director said that Tebelak and I are enjoying an ideally smooth working relationship on the making of the movie Godspell, but he is not co-directing the film with me. He did not write the screenplay. He participated only minimally in pre-production planning and discussions and attended very few rehearsals.
Yeah, he consulted.
But it was like, it's almost like he was asked by someone at Variety, are you guys making this movie together? And Green's like, no, let me shut that down.
I would say, think of this like Little Shop of Horrors, which did not hit Broadway until well into the 21st century. It was an off-Broadway musical.
Right, in the early 80s?
And then, like 80, 81, and then the movie is 86. 86, and really expands it. And then it comes to Broadway, when I'm in college, and doesn't quite work. And now there's an off-Broadway production with celebrities moving in and out of it nonstop that'll probably run forever because it's only written for 7 people, not like the 60, 70 people that are in the movie. And what would an expanded Godspell look like? It is people telling parables, acting like children, doing vaudeville routines. This is one of 2 Jesus musicals in 1971/73 with a soft shoe number. I don't know what's going on in 1971/73 that would say Jesus musical, soft shoe number.
Yeah. Watching this movie, I don't see how you make this a Broadway show. It's so intimate. It's so like kind of quiet, following the small group of people. And in the movie, it's not, I mean, we have sets, like we have like locations, but they're all like realistic, outdoor, authentic, like New York locations. We get a little bit at the end where it could be maybe like a set, but it doesn't feel like it feels like a movie that should be, if it's on stage, on an off-Broadway smaller theater stage than some giant Broadway theater. Like, that doesn't seem right to me.
When they did the 2011 revival, like here's the thing, other than a few places like where Phantom is about to close and where Wicked plays in the Broadway theater, Broadway theaters are actually quite small. They're from the Victorian era. You can't fit that many people in, and I believe the theater they chose for the 2011 revival is pretty small.
Oh, gotcha.
And also, like, it's known for there's a bunch of trampolines hidden in the stage, so they're trying to make a lot of movement with very little space. But no, Broadway theaters are very small. We're used to seeing, like, neither of us have lived in New York. We're used to seeing Broadway tours in giant concert halls,
right?
And they tend to like kind of evaporate there. Like, I saw, like, speaking of once, I saw once on tour at the Paramount in Seattle, which is a huge theater, and it just kind of didn't work. And then you see where they did it on Broadway, you're like, okay, this is intimate, because that production before the show and intermission, it's all set, the whole play is set at a pub, and like they're acting it at the pub, and it's a working pub. The audience can go on stage and get a drink before the show and at intermission. And that's the feeling you want. So, certain shows are better in small houses, and this is one of them. This is so you and I know each other from Jesuit college. Did you go to Catholic school before that?
No.
Okay, I went to Catholic middle school and high school, so Godspell is a huge deal because there's not much of a plot, because there is a Godspell Junior, and it is a way. It's unlike Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a story about the last week of Jesus's life. This doesn't really have a plot except for the passion at the end. We're telling you stories from the Gospel according to St. Matthew. We're going to have fun with it. We're going to make it accessible. And then we're going to piss off.
Yeah, I don't know how this works without the songs, because there is such little story in the movie.
Right.
I mean, like sometimes the only way to know like what the characters are thinking is like how they're looking while they're singing. Like I'm like, okay, what's the through line here from this scene to this scene? It's just, you just kind of like look at the expressions of the actors and
Right.
like is Victor Garber frowning or is he smiling?
and the thing, and like I said, that they do rearrange some of the songs and they take out some songs, so this isn't quite the stage show. But then they go to the Cherry Lane Theater in Greenwich Village, where this played for a few months before moving to another place. And so they literally go to the theater where you could have seen this a couple years earlier, which is really fun.
Yeah, that's in the movie. I saw that in my research. That was like, oh, the prodigal son scene.
Yeah, exactly. And then they're doing it in front of they're making up dialogue in front of a silent movie clips.
Yeah, that was a cute scene. I like that.
Like, I've seen this improv exercise before. So this is where I'm not sure if I've talked about this in the past. I was briefly in a clown troupe, and I understand the siren call of a weird hippie dippy clown troupe. I relate deeply to these people. This is the first time I'm like, oh, apostledom is just following a bizarre artistic director with depression. I get it.
Yeah.
And I also had an epiphany while watching this. We have briefly discussed how much I like the cinema film Cats by Tom Hooper.
Yes. How many times have you seen that film?
In theaters or overall?
Overall.
14.
Okay.
12 times in theaters.
Okay, so you prefer to see it in the theater.
I think that's the only way to see it. Also, I feel that's the only way to see most musicals, in my opinion, but that's a me thing. But Cats, if we're going to do a sidebar, I think it's important to be sort of trapped in a dark room with no escape to watch that movie. If you're at home being distracted, you're not going to see what's glorious about it, both intentionally and unintentionally.
That's a good
I was
point.
watching it. Yeah. And I brought my friend Jojo to see it in theaters, like the third time I saw it. And she's like, this is great. This reminds me of all the 70s musicals. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I'm watching this and I realize why I love this so much and why I like Cats is that this is Cats.
Are they still showing Cats up in Seattle in the theater?
They're
like midnight showings?
Not quite midnight, but yeah, Central Cinema occasionally does something they call Heckle Vision, where you text things to an app and it shows up on the screen. It's like a pop-up video MST3K type thing.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to a private screening. I was invited to one at the Beacon Cinema in Columbia City with a bunch of burners who are dressed as cats, because their Burning Man camp is cat themed as opposed to cats themed. And my friend is in that group and she's like, wait, you like cats, right? I'm like, yes. I'll even introduce it if you want me to.
Did you get Tom Hooper to come for a Q&A?
No, Tom Hooper, he did his director's commentary and like disappeared into the Heaviside layer. Nobody has heard from him since.
Oh, he recorded a commentary for the Blu-ray?
Yeah, well, because you record the commentary before it comes out in theaters.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. So he didn't know what the response was going to be when he recorded that. Okay.
There's like a joke, like, what's your favorite final film from a filmmaker? And somebody said Cats by Tom Hooper.
The favorite final film.
But no, this is weird. This is about a bunch of weirdos in a cult following a single leader. Yeah. And then they have to sacrifice that person at the end, just like Grisabella. Mm-hmm. They literally walk across the bridge in the same way as Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat sequence and turn back, oh man, the weird burlesque number at the Andrew Carnegie mansion is pretty much Mungo Jerry and Rumple teaser. I'm like, oh good, this is a plotless movie about vibes. Yes, kind of awkwardly shot.
Yeah. The filming of it did feel to me, I was like, it almost felt like the director was someone who had been somehow affiliated with the off-Broadway show and was like now tasked to put it on film. And he's like, how do I do this? Because I felt like in terms of like the cinematic qualities, as you said before, the editing is much more polished, whereas the filming, there's not a whole lot of style or anything. There's like one shot that like it almost looks like it falls off a building. Remember that shot where they're like, and then the people, the characters disappear, and it's almost like we're in a helicopter and it's like falling towards the ground. And so there's like an occasional shot like that where I'm like, oh, I'm paying attention, but usually it's just like cut to this character, cut to this character, cut to this.
and that's really fascinating. So like I said, it feels sort of like a documentary. The thing that I gravitate towards with this is, what a moment in time to crystallize. Nothing else looks like 1973. Like you'll get to it through the rest of your year, but like this is to me what 1973 New York feels like.
Yeah.
Specifically only this year. And that's fascinating to me. And that's what's interesting about film, is capturing a moment in time. And since this is shot on location, almost the entire movie is ADR'd or lip synced, which is really strange. Okay. And it doesn't quite work for me. Like the strongest scenes are where they're actually recording sound on set, which is the opposite of Cats, which is almost entirely recorded on like
on film.
On film, as opposed to ahead of time, which bothered me about Les Mis, his overrated version, the Tom Hooper one. And Cats lets you know immediately who's not a great singer, because he recorded sound live and he should have done it ahead of time. The exact opposite.
Wait, so Cats and Les Mis, he did it in two different ways or the same way?
The same way.
Oh, he did. Okay, he did the same.
Those are the same way, in a way that theater people do not like at all, because the problem with musicals post 70s is you stop hiring theater voices and start hiring celebrities and actors. If you're going to say hire Emma Stone, God bless her, in La La Land, maybe you should have somebody dub over her like Marnie Nixon did in the 60s and 50s, because La La Land is a movie. It's a beautifully shot movie with, I would say, bad songs, poorly sung and performed and danced.
I like La La Land a lot. I feel like sometimes I like when it's their own voice. I don't know. I feel like if like that audition song she has in La La Land, it was clearly someone else singing it, that wouldn't feel right to me.
Right. But my point, like they're both fine in it. My point is, hire singers to do musicals. Don't hire people who maybe have some idea. The one time this works is Andrew Garfield in Tick, Tick, Boom, who apparently never studied singing and is wonderful as Jonathan Larson.
Yeah, wasn't that there was some question, could he actually do this? Right. Could he sing?
Whereas compare La La Land to In the Heights and West Side Story. Other than Ansel Elgort, those are all theater voices, and you can tell, and they are serving the score is serving them. They are not straining to find these notes. Yes, it is no. If that's the point of the movie, is that we're trying to hear their normal voice. That's really interesting. That's what's interesting about Moulin Rouge, for instance, is that both Nicole and Ewan are really straining for those notes, but that is sort of the purpose of that. And then we brought this up before.
Everyone says I love you.
Exactly. Everyone says I love you, which also that's the point of it, is that these are normal people. But if you're just doing a show, like I know it's one of the highest grossing movies directed by a woman ever, and everybody loves it, Mamma Mia. I think it is poorly directed, and I think, other than Christine Baranski and Amanda Seyfried, is poorly sung.
Okay. I don't think Mamma Mia is the greatest movie ever made, but that is one entertaining movie that
it's absolutely entertaining. But what if they also had perfect voices?
But what if they also had perfect voices? It's Meryl Streep.
Yes, Meryl Streep is good in it too. She hits the character right. But if you've ever seen the musical, like the stage version, like the original Philida Lloyd staging, who she also directs the movie, and that's why
I've seen it on stage once. They came to Broadway Comes to Reno like 10 years ago, and it was delightful. It was wonderful. And
the voices were probably perfect.
Well, I don't remember that, but I was sitting there like, well, she's no Meryl Streep, but I'm going.
No. We probably saw the same Donna.
No, they were all really great, but no, I see what you're saying. It's a tricky thing. It's like, okay, let's, instead of Meryl Streep, we hire some brilliant singer who doesn't have a lot of charisma on camera for the non-singing scenes. That's a problem.
The problem is, post death of the movie musical, even though they never quite went away, they definitely lowered in stature. Like musicals and the Westerns both fell off around the same time. There's like a chart that shows like the rise and fall of each genre, like comedy, drama. And then for musical and Westerns, at one point there's just a drop off and it never recovers.
Right. Musicals, like, I feel like they've always been around though. Like, is there a decade of the last 50 years where there's just not much on film?
But like
we've always had something.
Only a few a year. They've come back a little bit because streaming, like Matilda the musical, is a perfect streaming,
which was delightful. I enjoyed that. I watched that a few weeks ago.
And oddly, one of the few times the person who directed the play also directed the movie and actually thought about what film looks like, because he's also a filmmaker. He made Pride, for instance.
Okay, which you think Lloyd did not do for Mamma Mia.
No, she has no idea. No, she did that, and then she did the Margaret Thatcher movie with
the
Meryl
Iron Lady,
and then never made another movie. I'm like, I understand. Like Susan Stroman, who directed The Producers, also directed the film version of The Producers, the musical, which looks like shit.
I don't think Mamma Mia looks like shit. Like there's some scenes in it that could, like, some moves of the camera could be better. And
no, Producers looks like shit. Mamma Mia gets away with a lot of its nonsense, but she's not a filmmaker, at least not currently. The sequel, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, which again fights about this. I think it's much better directed, but it's of course directed by a man and doesn't have the same celebrities, so people don't think of it in as high regard. But I think it's a much stronger musical as a visual medium. It's using the medium perfectly. The problem is musicals are now a niche thing, and they cost a lot of money, and you have to hire a celebrity if you want anybody to show up. West Side Story, In the Heights are both considered bombs, and they're both the ones that are actually like, they look like a freaking movie musical and not like somebody planted a camera in front of the stage, which is drives me crazy.
I'm still surprised that West Side Story didn't do better at the box office. I know it was December of 21 and not everyone was comfortable going back to the theater. That played into it. Right. Like I still feel like if West Side Story had come out in December of 2019, it would have done very well, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, 2020.
December 2020.
Well, that was its initial release.
No,
date.
I mean, yeah, no, I know. Yeah, gotcha. I'm talking about the pre-pandemic. Would West Side Story had done better at the box office? I think it would have. It
would have done better, not by a whole lot, because there's a certain ceiling for musicals. Greatest Showman, which made a shitload of money, is an exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I remember that did not open big.
No, it opened very small.
I remember it hung on. I think my mom and I saw it like 6 weeks after it came out.
Oh wow, yeah, and
it had been out for a while.
That is because of the soundtrack and Hugh Jackman, and really nothing else. Well, and
Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams can't open a movie. I adore her. I know you just did a video on her, but she can't open a movie.
I thought you meant. I thought you were talking about good things about it. I didn't know.
Oh no.
You're talking about the box office.
Right. No, I'm saying that's why it did so well. And also controversially, I think it's not a good musical, but it's shot really well. It actually looks like a musical. Rob Marshall, who is our de facto musical director, actually has no idea what to do with the camera. He just does a bunch of coverage and edits it together. Chicago, which is a wonderful movie, works because of the screenplay and the performances and the music, not because of Rob Marshall, because He's Into the Woods doesn't look very good. Mary Poppins Returns, which I like more than most people, doesn't really look very good. 9 doesn't look very good, and then he makes things like Memoirs of a Geisha and Pirates of the Caribbean 4, which also don't look very good. He doesn't know how.
Caribbean 4.
Yeah, which is the Antonio Banderas Penelope Cruz one, which is kind of fun.
Rob Marshall. Yeah, Rob Marshall's not my. If I see his name attached to the film, I'll always think Chicago first thing, but is there another movie he's made since Chicago that I love? I don't think there has been.
No, and his next one is the live action Little Mermaid.
Oh, he's directing that? I didn't know that. Okay,
so I'm so excited. I love the Little Mermaid. Oh, he directed it. Okay, he's just gonna. It's just gonna be edited.
Isn't it funny? Like when you see as many movies as we do, where just hearing who the director is of something, you get kind of a sense like what it's going to be like.
Oh, sure.
And you see, and not to say that Rob Marshall can't make another amazing movie down the road, but no, like if that was a much more interesting director behind Little Mermaid, I'd be more excited about it. But if it's him, it's like you kind of know what you're getting.
Right. And the movie's not done, and I've seen the trailer a bunch, but they showed the trailer before Avatar: The Way of Water, and Cameron has talked about between that and Aquaman kind of looking like crap because they're not actually in the water. They're pretending to be in the water. And now can't unsee that in The Little Mermaid. Whereas in The Way of Water, he threw them into tanks.
Right.
And so it looks like it because Aquaman, Aquaman
Kate
and
Winslet had to hold her breath for 27 minutes.
Right, for a sequence that isn't even in the Avatar, the second one. It's in the third one, probably. Oh, no. I'm thinking of another stuff. No, so that's probably when she's talking to one of the whales.
Oh, okay.
And then she did that like for fun because she's a weirdo.
Do you think Godspell should have had a musical number underwater?
Well, I mean, they do. They're in the Bethesda fountain getting baptized in the first 10 minutes.
Well, yeah. Are they? Do we have any shots that go under the
No,
water?
no. No, this is a giant tourism video for New York City.
That fountain I have seen in so many movies. Isn't that the fountain location where the kid gets kidnapped and ransom?
I haven't seen that since theaters. No, I think of it always as the end of Angels. Makes sense. Angels in America. That's where Angels ends.
Angels in America.
For specific reason too, if you want to, we don't have time to get into Angels in America and why, but that's just important to AIDS research and stuff like that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's in a bunch of stuff. I in New York when I was a teenager, I saw a music video being shot there. It's in. You can go there in the Spider-Man game on PlayStation.
I think it's in 101 Dalmatians too.
Makes sense. I actually never saw the live action one.
Yeah, it might be in both. Like I'm pretty sure in the animated version we get that. But...
Yeah, it's one of the entrances to Central Park. Of course, you're going to see it a bunch. It's gorgeous. It's the end of John Wick 2. I would say is the most recent example.
Oh, John Wick 2 ends there.
Right when they're all coming after you, and then he and the dog start running into the night.
Right. I'm sure it's in a lot of stuff. It's a very famous place. So whenever I see it in something, but even, looking at a film from 1973, it's kind of cool to see it in a different decade, a different time that I don't normally see it. And obviously we get the World Trade Center here, which I found very interesting because from my research, it's like, so the buildings weren't 100% open yet. Is that right? They were under construction.
Correct. I wonder if when they're shooting this, they run into Philip Petit, the acrobat.
He should have had a cameo.
Time. Right. He should have had, maybe he's there. But how does it, because like we see in a bunch of shots, but then like we're doing All for the Best, the soft shoe number. And then they're like on top of a building dancing. You're like, where the hell are they? And then the helicopter pulls back. And then you suddenly realize where they are in a way. And you get a feeling, a pang in a way they just couldn't have anticipated in 1973. A weird little creepy, crawly, uncomfortable feeling.
yeah there's a lot, but it's in a lot of backgrounds of shots. It's interesting. I mean, it doesn't give me a creepy feeling when I see the Trade Center towers in older movies, but
now it's noticeable.
It does completely take you out of any sort of story, like you just
right.
I mean, even that scene in Home Alone 2, which is the movie I just mentioned, like we get that scene of him going up there and the helicopter goes out, and it is like you kind of forget the movie you're watching for 10 seconds.
Right. And then, later, 76 is the Jeff Bridges King Kong. It's around there. And that uses the World Trade Center instead of Empire State Building because they modernize it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then Peter Jackson's like, actually, never mind. Let's go back to.
But I do find it interesting. I mean, this isn't like a giant scale movie. It's interesting to me. Like, you think if they were still constructing the towers, like how did they get permission to go up there and shoot, and with a helicopter? Like, that seems like that would have cost some money, right?
Probably. Or like they said, they wanted to advertise it. Like, here's a story about like Jesus's good word. Sure, come on up. But like, imagine living in New York while they're trying to shoot this movie. You're like trying to just get a bagel in the morning, and out of the corner of your eye, you spot like a Superman clown jumping around like a dummy.
Yeah. You look over there and you see a future star of James Cameron's Titanic. You're like, what is happening here?
Oh, it's all the more nonsensical, the better. Like a lot of like the history of movie musicals that are adapted from the stage show, which is not how movie musicals start. That's actually what kills the movie musical, is that they decided we're only going to adapt things that are popular on stage, as opposed to making original movies like Astaire and Rogers and Jane Powell and Hope and Crosby and Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor. All these people, they start adapting things. And a lot of movies that don't quite work, a lot of movie musicals like 70s onward don't quite work because they change too much or they don't change anything. Godspell actually kind of works because they didn't have time to think through what to change other than like the locations. Like the play's not set in an abandoned New York City. It's just anywhere, USA. It's set inside your theater. It is about an acting troupe telling you stories. What's fun about Godspell is that it just exists. We're not sure how it happened or who did it and who these people are and where they disappear to at the end. They are just a part of us now. You have lived with them. You have experienced these stories. I did not grow up Christian or Catholic, but I went to Catholic school. And this is like the one time I sort of get what they're doing. I'm like, okay, you're just telling nice stories in a very direct, hippie-ish manner. And you're all smiling and you're not doing anything bad until, you know, you sacrifice Jesus. But of course, that is part of God's divine plan. Without us Jews, I myself have a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother. I'm like, without us killing Jesus, you wouldn't have a freaking religion. Stop giving us crap about this. Judas was doing exactly what God told him to. Jesus accepted it. And the Romans and the Jews were little chess pieces in this story.
But yeah, I like the ethereal quality of like, is this happening in real time? Are we really in New York City? Where is everybody?
Yeah.
And that does have a great payoff. You know, there's not a whole lot of, you know, striking camera work, but the camera pushing down that sidewalk with them, and then we stop as they turn the corner, and then we move forward and it keeps going, and then there's like 80 people walking on the sidewalk and the cast is gone.
Yeah,
like that was a very cool shot. And then end credits. I thought that paid off this whole idea of the movie really well.
Yeah. I just want more. I want more wild swings like this, and movie musicals don't really have the option to do that right now because it costs so much money and it's usually based on something else. But like, make a weird scrappy movie for $10. Like, we keep going back to Damien Chazelle. I still think his strongest film is Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, his Harvard thesis film, which
I've never seen that.
Which, people forget that he made a movie before Whiplash, and it drives me crazy that people call Whiplash his debut film. I'm like, no. Here's a lovely little musical that he shot in black and white for no money, and he sets his themes pretty quickly.
Kind of like how people refer to James Cameron's debut as The Terminator when it was actually Piranha 2.
Right. And also Piranha 2 is a good movie. People should watch it. It's really fun.
I wonder, is there an interview? Like, does Damien Chazelle think of Whiplash as his first feature, or does he refer back to the...
if he does, I have not seen that. I think he should be very proud of Guy and Madeline, because La La
What year
Land,
was that? Like 2010?
I don't
before
know.
That. Oh, okay.
It's before that. So yeah, Whiplash is what, 2012, 2013?
2014 Whiplash.
Yeah, I don't know. What, and the thing that bugs me about La La Land, it's that he said, "Oh, I wrote the script originally in college." I'm like, yeah, you can tell.
That's funny. So yeah, in terms of like other things about Godspell, what did you think of the performers in it? Like, what did you think of the actors?
Oh, they're all amazing because they're theater people. They have very open faces. They clearly have clown training. Like, they hit the base level of clowning, at least how I learned it in like the Buffon style, is, you sort of hit a mark, you stop, you think, then you do. So you have to make this tableau, you have to make this image, this pose, and that's part of your personality. You're not talking and walking at the same time. If you are doing that, it is an active choice you are making, you are thinking through. And these people are all like, ha 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 ha. They, like, their extensions are great. They know how far their legs can go and how far they can push it. They are not acting for the camera, they're acting for the stage, which I think which is what bothers me about Tom Hooper's idea of musicals, because Les Mis, for instance, should be sung to the rafters. But then he's like, I'm going to do a close up. Your head's going to be in the frame and nothing else. And you're just kind of whisper your dialogue.
Don't move.
Don't move. Don't move. And don't raise your voice above this level, even though this is a ballad.
And not to give you any additional pressure, but this is your Oscar moment. So action.
And like, you're not gonna hit half those notes. And they have earpieces in, and somebody's playing a piano of the thing as opposed to playback. So somebody's playing piano live to match that. So that's why the tempos in both Cats and Les Mis are all over the place. And like, those are two shows I'm baffled by. I'm not huge on Les Mis, the stage show, or Cats, the stage show, but for different reasons. Whereas with Cats, they spent $100 million to chase something that never worked in the first place, and I find that very fascinating. Godspell is while it's very often produced, a lot of people hate it, and you can see why. Like, I've actually intentionally never seen a live performance of it, because if you're not into musicals and you're trapped in a room with Godspell, that's probably hell. Because this is a particular type of theater that is not for everybody. It is, however, for me. But also, like, if it's just like a meh, like, we almost did it in high school. We did Wonderful Town, and during the read through of Act One, that's a Bernstein, Compton and Green one that became My Sister Eileen, the movie. After we read Act One, our director was like, "Well, how about we just do Godspell instead?" I'm like, "No, I like my role. We should have done Godspell, because we did not know what to do with a late 40s Compton and Green and Bernstein musical with 16-year-olds." about like female journalists in Greenwich Village.
Yeah, I think you could get a group of teenagers to do Godspell. They don't need to understand every word of the songs. I think you get a really great, version of the show.
Even it's a good lesson, because
teenagers don't know what's happening.
Right, it's a good lesson, because these are all obviously a lot of lyrics are just taken from hymns. A lot of these are Episcopal hymns. They're not brand new. They're not new lyrics. Schwartz has new lyrics, but a lot of this is stuff a Catholic school kid would already know in their head. Not that they're reading Episcopal hymns, but they know the parables pretty well. Yeah, at this point.
Something I also admired about the movie was that I didn't really recognize any of the faces. There's just two, really. Yeah. Victor Garber, who we know, like, as an older actor in film and TV. I didn't even know he was in films this early on. He is so adorable in this movie. He's so wonderful. Cute. If he didn't have that stupid hair.
I love his Jesus. It's such a sweet Jesus.
No, it's perfect for this movie, but I'm just like, so man, if he had a different haircut, he would be freaking handsome on film. I've never seen him this young. He's very charismatic in this movie. You can see why they're all following him, and from scene to scene. The other actor I recognize, because I grew up in the 90s. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Hello.
It's
Lynn Thigpen. Is that how you say her last name?
Yes. The chief from Carmen Sandiego. I also know her from All My Children, which was the one soap I actually watched growing up.
And she passed away in 2003. Her last major film was Anger Management. If you go to her IMDb page, it just plays the Anger Management trailer on a loop. So that seems kind of unfair.
Right. And she had done it out of town. She had done this show. I think every single person in this had done a version of Godspell. And I think half the cast are from the off-Broadway show. Yeah. In your research, did you see who was in the 1972 Toronto cast?
Oh, you better believe I wrote that down. I saw that. I went, oh my God.
So yeah,
Victor
go for it.
Garber, he plays the same role, Jesus, in Toronto's 1972 production of Godspell. Other members of that cast were Eugene Levy, Andrea Martin, Gilda Radner, Dave Thomas, Paul Schaefer, and Martin Short. Can we see this?
Yeah.
Is there a way to see this? Is this on somewhere?
There is an oral history you can read. I do not believe if it was filmed, it should be in whatever Canada's version of the Library of Congress is. In America, every single show has been filmed poorly, and you can watch it once only at the New York Public Library, and you have to sign a major contract and have like a security guard watching you as you watch it, like for research purposes.
Why is it so locked up?
because of rights issues. These can't legally be out there. People say, like, release the tapes. They're also poorly shot from the back of a house 70 years ago with bad sound. So yes, so Paul Schaefer was a music director, and Howard Shore is on saxophone in that production as well. Both people became band leaders for Saturday Night Live. So, but yeah, the cast you said, that's half of Second City there.
That's mind-blowing.
That's mind-blowing. And then they all became megastars like a year or two later. It's insane how huge that cast is. That is the North Star of the cast. If you look, I'm sure you saw a couple of photos, you're like, yep, that's all of them.
But yeah, no, I would love to even just see a clip from that version for 5 minutes. I'd be curious to see, like, is it pretty close to the movie version? I would have been a year later, probably pretty close.
Yeah.
With all of that amazing talent. So the one other person from the cast, I didn't know who she was, but what did I read? That she was like the only one, Robin Lamont. She was the only player in the original off-Broadway version, the movie version, and the Broadway cast in 76. She's the only one who's in all three.
Right.
And she's great in the movie too. I like she's got a couple songs, like some of the close-ups and her interactions with Garber, I think, are really nice. So she's great. I mean, there's no bad apple in the cast. Like, they're all really nice. I just don't know many of them from outside of this movie.
Yeah, what an ethereal piece of cinema.
Yeah. There was just gone. There was a little bit of like homoerotica in this movie that I picked up on. Was that just me?
No, there's a lot. No, you also asked like what's interesting about musicals. It's the one genre in film that can get away with being deeply homoerotic.
Yeah, there's like some moments with Garber like putting his hand on that guy's cheek, and I'm like, and Garber's gay. I'm like, this is interesting. I like this.
Yeah. Well, no, because first John the Baptist, almost says damn, and then Jesus slaps him, and then he's like, aha, never mind, kissy smooch.
Yeah. And Garber's got that eye makeup with the tears thing, and he has those, just that cute and he's just like smiling at that guy with the facial hair, and I'm like, I like this.
Yeah, David Haskell, who unfortunately passed away from brain cancer the following decade. But
in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah, he's wonderful.
He was terrific.
He's incredible in this. Yeah, it's just go for it.
But I wouldn't say I would say I admired the movie more than I liked it. I mean,
That's fine.
Is very, there's not a whole lot of story here. You know that about me, Marcus. I'm very much a story guy. And it like, for me, I was like, once we got to like the hour and 10-minute mark, I'm kind of like, okay, there's not a whole lot going on here. So,
but then a scary puppet happens.
I like the scene of the crucifixion, the way that's depicted in here. What do they just put around his wrist? They just like tie like ribbons or something like that.
Right. And we stole that for the Loyola Marymount production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 2003 or 4. We crucified him on a fence.
Is Jesus Christ Superstar? I mean, don't give away all of it. I have not seen that. I don't know much about it. That's more of a spectacle movie, right? Because
yes,
it's Norman Jewison.
It's Norman Jewison, but like, I don't want to spoil it because it both is and it isn't.
Okay.
It is still like it's a huge cast and it's telling a full story, but the way in which he does it is deeply experimental and very similar to Godspell. In a way, it's the exact opposite method of Fiddler, which he made a year earlier.
Right. Yeah, so I always find that interesting that he does like these kind of like quiet dramas in the 60s, and then he makes Fiddler on the Roof, followed by Jesus Christ Superstar,
right,
after In the Heat of the Night.
Right, and 2 musicals about Jews, and he himself, despite his name Norman Jewison, is not a Jew.
Right. Oh, that's right. We talked about that on the Fiddler on the Roof episode, that they assumed because of his name that he was, and he had to tell them later on, oh, I'm not a Jew.
Right. No. I would say he's an honorary Jew because he cut his teeth directing the Judy Garland show, which is one of the, like, not that Judy Garland was Jewish, but that's a deeply Jewish show in terms of how they're doing the sketches and the songs and who's behind the scenes for a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, I like the running time of Godspell. It's about an hour 38 around there. Before we get to the credits, I felt like that was, if this movie was 210, it'd be kind of rough.
And that's the play.
The play is about 210.
Yeah, the play has way more going on and way more dialogue.
Okay, I don't know. I feel like I might like this on the stage more. You think it's better on film?
I guarantee you, within 100 miles of you, somebody's doing Godspell.
Well, now that I've seen the film and we haven't even, we talked about it a little bit. The songs in the movie are great.
They're wonderful. Here's the thing. Songs. Yeah, because I adore Godspell because
the most about the movie. The quality of the songs.
This is something I can put on and listen to. Anytime, and that's why it has staying power. The play people either love or don't love. There's no real middle ground, but listening to it is just so good. There's Prepare Ye the Way of the Lord, there's Day by Day, Turn Back, Oh Man, You Are the Light of the World, the one on the boat. wonderful song.
Right. Mm-hmm.
By My Side, the one that actually lasted through.
I love that shot, by the way, of I can't remember which cast member it is singing, but it's like you see the Statue of Liberty on the right-hand side and she's on the boat on the left, and that composition I liked. That was nice.
Yeah, that's the one time the movie really kind of opens up and has fun with its camera, because there are only so many things you can do on a boat.
Right.
So the limitations are interesting to them, whereas the rest of the time they're just kind of wandering through New York and here's a distant shot of them.
But nothing beats the camera falling off the building. That was about all I remember.
No, the songs are great. And there's one original song that's a Beautiful City, which is in the, like, near the end. We can build beautiful city. And then that is now in the show. Like Grease, You're the One That I Want is now in the show. It has been, and they rewrote it after the Rodney King riots. They oddly, like We Can Build a Beautiful City. And then for the 2011 revival, and I think you should seek this out, they slowed it down into a soft little ballad. And it's just something I put on constantly.
So when you listen to the songs in this, are you listening to the movie soundtrack or from like one of the stage shows?
I prefer to listen to the 2011 revival.
2011 revival.
And the people, basically the same people who worked on the play also worked on the movie, but they had a budget, so they were able. The original recording is only four musicians, and then they got more money to add more. That's why. So Paul Schaefer is on keyboards in this movie.
Oh, okay.
And so they believe that while it is, less of a full recording, it is a much better version of the show than the original one. So it depends on the song. I would prefer to listen to either the stage shows to the movie, but the movie, like if it's Victor Garber or David Haskell singing, I'm going to put that one on. Okay. But the one I listen to most is the 2011 revival, because they've rethought it. They rocked it up a bit. It's a little more clear-eyed. Whereas, the movie itself is just a bunch of weird sketches and a bunch of really gorgeous songs. This has staying power because the music is so good. There's a reason why Stephen Schwartz is still in our brains 50 years later. It's because he took this bizarre thing about nothing and gave it a real nice, dense, varied rhythm and sound.
Yeah, no, the songs are great. I love that song When Jesus Is Dying. It's very quiet, but I found that a haunting song. I'm dying. Yes, that was good. And then Day by Day is the one that's been stuck in my head since I woke up today.
Right. No, I sang that in like middle school Catholic school choir. No, it was a medley, so it was Day by Day. Prepare You the Way of the Lord and Day by Day, and then finale. So you've added, Long live God, long live God, long live God, and then so go prepare, and then we go Day by Day,
and then it gets faster. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're all okay. The whole audience is clapping and having a great time.
Turn Back, Oh Man is a wonderful song. That's the one in the Carnegie Mansion.
Okay. Yeah. I wish I would love to know just a little bit about kind of like the pre-production of this movie. Like I couldn't find any stories about like, okay, when was the decision made? We're going to make this into a film. Like, what were the expectations of this movie? Was this like primed to be like a big box office movie of 73? Were they like, no, just kind of throwing it out there and seeing if it sticks? Like, I'd be curious to know like the producers behind it. Like, what were they like? Was it just like a kind of a one-off? Like, oh, we like this off-Broadway show, let's make it into a movie for cheap and
which happens sometimes. Like there are movies in the 90s and the aughts that are also like that, but they really never made it into theaters. And so they're just curios that you find at weird video stores and like on the dark web.
The dark web. So it opens at the end of March in New York. I don't know how nationwide this got, but then it got entered into the Cannes Film Festival in May, and it was nominated for the Palme d'Or.
Yeah.
And then, which went to, what did I read earlier? It was two winners that year. One was Scarecrow, was that the Al Pacino, Gene Hackman movie? And then one other movie with Alan Bates. They shared the Palme d'Or for 73. And then at the following award season, it gets one nomination. It's nominated at the Writers Guild Awards for Best Comedy Adapted from Another Medium. The hilarious comedy Godspell.
WGA is like Golden Globes. They just change their rules every freaking year.
Yeah, it's like I did that Michelle Williams video. I love that. I didn't put it in the video, but I watched it a bunch. That clip of Seth Rogen introducing the nominees for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy, and he introduces Michelle Williams, saying, "Michelle Williams for the hysterical comedy My Week with Marilyn." It's like some of these. I mean, it just happened. It just happened at the most recent Golden Globes, like The Banshees of Inisherin. Like that's a comedy. Like
right, and Elvis is a drama.
Very sad film.
Right.
It keeps going. Decades later, keeps going.
Well, Banshees of Inisherin, like Martin McDonagh's Best Plays, is hilarious until it isn't. The first act of Banshees is the funniest movie of 2022, in my opinion.
Yeah, but then it gets really sad, and so I think of it more as a drama. But
right, whereas Elvis is a musical that was nominated for drama. Because Austin Butler and Colin Farrell still should be winning, just in the opposite categories.
Thankfully, I mean, by the time this drops, this will be just around the Oscars, and so thankfully, it's the musical or comedy or drama stuff is gone now. Now it's like, okay, it's just Best Actor, but yeah, that's kind of funny that Godspell is nominated for Best Comedy. And I mean, I don't know like what this could have. I mean, maybe music categories at the Oscars. Maybe it was too early in the year, but Cabaret came out in February the previous year. So I mean, I couldn't find a lot of reviews. The one that I found was Roger Ebert's 4-star review on his site, which was one of the reasons why. I mean, you put it in your email. Then I looked it up. I saw that Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. And whenever he gives something 4 stars, I usually take it on here at Film at 50. And that's gotten me into trouble a few times on some not so great movies from 71. Cold Turkey with Dick Van Dyke, which he gave 4 stars. And that was kind of a rough go. But yeah, so he says, Roger Ebert said at the top of his review, the thing about Godspell that caught my heart was its simplicity. Its refusal to pretend to be anything more than it is. It's not a message for our times or a movie to cash in on the Jesus movement or even quite a youth movie. It's a series of stories and songs like the Bible is, and it's told with the directness that simple stories need, with no tricks, no intellectual gadgets, and a lot of openness. I like that. That's how he opened the review. 4 stars.
His 4 stars are always buck wild. I miss him so much because he would just something would just get in his brain, like 4 stars to Sky Captain, the World of Tomorrow.
Did he give that 4 stars?
4 stars.
I forgot about that.
Which is a movie I love, but I'm like, it's also not
was the
good.
Technology, right? It wasn't
right, but also like the technology was immediately dated the second it came out.
If you go through his archives, usually there's 1 4-star review every year that you're like, 4-star?
Yeah. You know what? Because I was just having this argument on Twitter. There's no such thing as objective taste. And he understood that. He knew it was his own subjectivity. He didn't pretend he was a god or anything, which too many freaking film Twitter personalities think they are. Like objective taste, that's an oxymoron in my personal opinion, in my subjective opinion. Ebert was good at subjectivity and made a whole show about arguing with somebody who didn't think like him.
Yeah. And some of these kinds of movies that Roger Ebert gives 4 stars to, I couldn't find it. I imagine that Gene Siskel did not give Godspell 4 stars. Like, it doesn't feel like that would have happened. I don't know. Like, did Gene Siskel love musicals? Like, I'm trying to remember if there's like a musical film that he really was passionate about on the show.
I don't know.
Nothing comes to mind right now.
Well, no, because we don't watch, that shows the 80s, and that's, like I said, after the musical is quote unquote dead.
Right.
Yeah, I don't recall anything. So
he loved Little Shop of Horrors. They both did. I remember that.
Right. Well, because Little Shop of Horrors is the greatest musical ever made.
Roger Ebert gave Everyone Says I Love You 4 stars, and Gene Siskel gave it a thumbs down. That's a fun chat. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, of course. No, I was so Everyone Says I Love You and Evita came out roughly in the same month.
Yeah,
and those play at the same theater, so I double billed them several times. And those are 2 of my favorite movies, and they're both diametrically opposite in how they're being directed.
I remember going to my mom in December. I don't think I came to Reno until January of '97, and I'm like, Mom, will you take me to this musical? It's called Everyone Says I Love You. She's like, okay.
And it's just about depressed
Roberts.
people jumping in and out of bed. Yeah.
It's got Julia Roberts and Goldie Hawn in the same movie and Drew Barrymore, and they don't share any scenes.
Right.
But we're going.
It's such a gorgeous film.
But so yeah, anything else about Godspell? I mean, I would recommend it for the music, but there's such little style in the cinematography that, I mean, I don't know. I like the story is so minimal. I almost feel like you could just listen to the soundtrack.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if there's anything about the movie itself that you have to watch this with your eyes.
If you are not into theater, I would agree with you. If you are, this is one of the few times a play has come through very unfiltered. They have not thought this through as a film, and that, I think, makes it unique and singular and very important to watch. I adore this film. I stumbled upon this on TCM one day. I'm like,
oh, okay.
Because I had not seen it growing up. I just knew the music and like, medleys of it. But then when I finally sat down and watched it, I'm like, this is what I want from movies, is be yourself, be weird, don't give a crap about anybody. But going back to its theatricality, it's just so rare in that instance, is that these are all classically trained in dance and clown, in comedy, in singing, and they just nail it in a way that, say, Hair, the film version, doesn't quite do 6 years later in the Milos
79
Forman. 79, a full 10 years after anybody cared about the play.
So it was kind of like, I mean, there's been some like that was Phantom of the Opera, kind of like that, when that opened in 04. Like that felt to me like 8 to 10 years too late.
And also didn't get what's lovely about that extremely silly, campy show. The movie, oddly, is Joel Schumacher's like least campiest, and he should have gotten that more than anybody.
Should have been shot like Batman and Robin.
Yeah, it's kind of a dud. The play is hilarious, and they know exactly where they are, especially now that they're closing. The last 10 years are like, literally, this is a comedy. Go through this with us. Have a goof. So Godspell, I love watching, because for that reason, is that this does not look like film acting at all. If you like clowning or circus or carnival stuff in the slightest, this is for you. But speaking of Hair, the musical, the stage version, doesn't really have a plot. It's more kind of stories that add up. The Milos Forman one with Treat Williams and Beverly D'Angelo slaps on a plot that doesn't work.
Oh, they added plot to the movie.
They stamp on what is broadly alluded to.
That's the musical. I haven't seen it, but that's the one with Aquarius, right?
Yes.
And Diane Keaton was in the original cast on stage.
Yeah, Age of Aquarius, just like Prepare Ye the Way of the Lord. It's the bookends.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, what do you think is the most famous song from Godspell? Like, what's the one that most people know? Is it Day by Day?
Day by Day.
I felt like I'd heard that before.
Yeah, if you were around the 70s, you heard By My Side a lot, like on the radio, because that's a nice one. But yeah, Day by Day is the big one. And if you went to any kind of parochial school, you probably know Prepare Ye the Way of the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah, I know all these extremely well, but that's because I'm me.
So if they made a 2023 film adaptation of Godspell, what would that look like, do you think?
I would try to do the same way, as just like get together a troupe that can actually learn from each other and like put together a show, like, do it in the park a few times. Like, no, what they would do is they would go to they would go to the Shakespeare in the Park in Central Park and put on a performance. And if that's good enough, then they could like pro shot it or like really experimentally do it. But no, if you're putting too much thought into this other than the camera movements, I think you're underselling what works about Godspell. It's that it's just a vibe. It's just a vibe, and happy people getting along, talking about the word of God in a beautiful way without all the suffering and shame and pain and blood and violence, which turned me off from Christianity so long ago. This is a very judgment-free story, and that's why I think people should watch it in addition to just listening to it. But if you just want to have a happy time one day, put on any number of the scores or recordings of this, and you will continue to have a really good day.
Would a Godspell / Jesus Christ Superstar 1973 double feature be an interesting watch?
I would love that. If you have the patience for it, yes, because they're about different things.
Okay.
And yeah, I know few musicals better than Jesus Christ Superstar. So I'm happy to talk about it in detail. Oh, I don't need to do research. It's in here.
It's just
it's in my brain.
Yeah, it's like when I did a episode, I was a guest for a Sandra Bullock conversation. I said, I don't think I need to research this. But so yeah, so I think it's worth a watch. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. I dug its vibe, and I'm excited to hear back the songs now, like go on Spotify and stuff, and like and really get into the songs. And because I didn't want to like listen to a bunch before I watched the movie. I just wanted to watch it kind of cold, and now that I really love the music, I'm gonna listen to it more. So yeah, it's a good film. All right, that takes us to our final two segments. What would you pair this with, Marcus? A more modern movie, Divine Double Feature.
I'm not even going to overthink this. Everyone should see In the Heights. It is the best movie musical since Moulin Rouge, which I also just rewatched for New Year's Eve. In the Heights is underseen, and it's beautiful, and it stars Broadway voices who actually know how to dance and sing and perform to the rafters. It's a beautiful thing. It is deeply flawed, and the adaptations they make both work and don't work, but that is what a musical should look like in this day and age. John M. Chu combined, he and Lin-Manuel Miranda have the exact same obsessions as classic musicals and like 80s, 90s MTV. And that's perfect. It's an exquisite film. I saw it 6 times in theaters. I would have seen it 10 had it not bombed and left theaters. And now it is now I'm going to watch it every 4th of July. This is the purest distillation, other than Cats, of what Godspell like inspires within my soul.
Yeah, the musical number where they go up the side of the building is the part I've never forgotten. That
which is amazing. Not very interesting on stage. That's the most improved sequence, I think. That is when the sun goes down. Yeah, sun goes down.
I need to watch that again. I saw it. Is it where was it? Where is it streaming? Is it
HBO Max?
Is it HBO Max? Okay. Yeah, I need to watch that again. I only saw it the one time.
It might be on Disney Plus too, because it's a Fox film.
Oh, okay.
Maybe no, sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's Warner Brothers. Sorry. And right, because
Warner Brothers.
Because
so HBO Max.
Because when Disney bought Fox, for a while there were things that if Fox shows in theaters, then it has to go to HBO Max, because HBO Max had a deal with Fox and Fox Searchlight. But if they show it straight to streaming, they can show it on Disney Plus and Hulu immediately, which is why Predator and Hellraiser, for instance, were Hulu movies.
So Disney doesn't own everything yet. That's just a few years away.
Well, so they're letting that contract lapse.
We get to a point where it's just Disney.
Yeah. So In the Heights is still on HBO Max as we record this. It's not something they're pulling off the site to stop paying
haven't
residuals.
Deleted it from the site.
No, not yet. Knock on wood. What would be your pairing?
I just went with I like that one's better than mine, because you have the same locale. You have the New York setting, which is great. Because I just watched it a few weeks ago. The most recent musical I've watched that was based on started on stage, Roald Dahl's Matilda the musical. We didn't really know I did not expect much, because it wasn't getting any nominations. Like, it didn't get in at the Golden Globes. So I'm like, oh, it must not be very good. And I thought it got a little bit long-winded in the last 40 minutes, but otherwise, I was really taken with it. It has some beautiful musical sequences, a great Emma Thompson performance as Trunchbull, and Lashana Lynch is wonderful in the movie too, as Miss Honey, and the little girl who plays Matilda was fantastic. And
it's a wonderful play too.
Like, I was watching it, and this happens, I'm sure this happens to you too. I'm watching this movie, I'm like, I want to be watching this movie in a crowded movie theater right now.
Right.
There's by myself at home on my screen at home.
Right. There's a theater 5 minutes from my house that does show Netflix and Amazon movies, because it's the last remaining landmark theater in Washington State. But Netflix just didn't give a crap. This actually came out in theaters in the rest of the world. And because it's a Sony movie, and Netflix bought it for America, and just they wanted a Christmas movie for families to watch, is my understanding. But I would have loved to have seen this in theaters, and I don't know why they put no effort behind it, because it is a huge and well-respected musical. It did lose the Tony to Kinky Boots, which is a mistake. Matilda the musical is way better than Kinky Boots the musical, regardless of if Cyndi Lauper wrote the music. That's why it was a big deal. And it's gay, it's about drag, we want to be progressive. Matilda is an infinitely better stage show.
And I saw it on stage in San Francisco. I want to say it was 2016 or 17 at what's it called, the Orpheum.
Yeah, we saw the same production.
Oh, okay. Oh, it was glorious. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the best musicals I've seen on stage. It was great. So in that regard, I'm like, the movie's got to be pretty good, right? But I just wasn't hearing much about it, and they just kind of like dropped it on Christmas Day, like, here you go. I'm like, oh, this could be rough. And I thought it was cinematically beautiful, like a lot of great cinematography, and
great choreography.
yeah. So I would recommend that. I mean, it'd be cool to just look at, like, I mean, they're very different. Like, one's very, Godspell's more intimate, quieter, whereas Matilda's a bigger movie. But to just kind of see the evolution of the movie musical would be cool. And In the Heights as well, fantastic. All right, beyond the flick, Victor Garber. This might be the only time you really talk about him. Kind of interesting if you look on IMDb. He's in a film in 1974. And then he's like in nothing until the late 80s.
Right, because he goes back to stage.
Where he goes back to stage. It's the 90s where his film career starts to build.
He's just Anthony and Sweeney Todd in the late 70s. Just a tiny little play called Sweeney Todd.
Just a little, yeah. He wasn't doing much. Yeah.
Right.
But it's funny when you look on IMDb, it doesn't go into stage work. So some people might see that as like, oh, he went and did other things. But it's like, no, he was always working, I'm sure. He just didn't do it for film or TV.
Right.
And then he's in a bunch of stuff throughout the 90s. And then I would say after Titanic, then you see him in a lot. He's on Alias, a lot of TV projects. And I want to say he pops up at least once every 2 or 3 years in a pretty good role in an Oscar movie, or he's in Argo, he's in Sicario, he's in all these great films of the last 20-25 years. If you had to pick like your 3 favorites, which is kind of hard to do because like he's in like very small roles in great movies, but it's like, is that a great Victor Garber? But like if you had to pick 2 or 3 that you really love him in, like what would be your choices?
Well, I'm also anticipating a couple of your answers, so I decided to focus on his theatrically based and musical projects.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So he is Legally Blonde. He's the professor in that, which became a great stage musical.
Oh, right.
There's a pro shot of it. If you're interested, I recommend tracking it down. It's really good. And then I
saw that on stage too. They played that in Reno in 2017.
Good. Yeah. Did you like it?
Oh, it was wonderful. Yes. I took my mom to that.
It's really cool. No, it's shockingly great show. And he gets the song, his character gets the song of Blood in the Water as he's lecturing the class, which is the worst song in the show, but it still like works for him. And then there's the TV production of Annie, directed by Rob Marshall, the last good thing that he directed. And he plays Daddy Warbucks opposite Audra McDonald, Alan Cumming, and Christian Chenoweth.
Is this after Chicago or before?
This
Chicago?
Is before Chicago. Chicago is his film debut. This is right after he sets up Cabaret on the stage with Sam Mendes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So he plays Daddy Warbucks in. It's the best adaptation of the play. The 1980 or 82 John Huston one is obviously a better film, but it's a weird adaptation of the show itself and adds all that weird stuff and a lot of the racist stuff and that weird helicopter chase at the end, which they for some reason retain in the Jamie Foxx one. That's the last time Rob Marshall actually moved a camera because he was forced to, because it's mostly one shots on Steadicam. As opposed to just, I don't know how to shoot this. Let's just shoot it from every angle and we'll figure it out later. RIP his editors.
Yeah.
And then my number 1, it's not a huge role. He is in the adaptation of Jeffrey, the Paul Rudnick play, starring Steven Weber and Patrick Stewart. The play is better, and I wish they would have kept John Benjamin Hickey, who did it off Broadway, instead of Steven Weber, who is straight and a sitcom actor. But I think he's straight, actually. I don't know. I never looked into it. He plays straight men a lot. Jeffrey is a wonderful 90s movie in the gay cinema canon, and if you have not seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, Jeffrey, that was a film in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen that. That's worth a look.
It's really good. I think Steven Weber is the weakest link and he's the lead. But it is very specifically a moment in time in American gay rights and AIDS in theater. And there's a long running joke throughout it about cats. So of course I like it.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, his film career and TV career since the early 90s has been pretty solid. I mean, he's in a lot of great stuff, including Sleepless in Seattle, The First Wives Club. He's Goldie Hawn's ex-husband in that, right? And then he's in Milk, he's in Argo, he's in Sicario. I mean, that's a pretty good list of credits. If I had to pick like 3 movies that I love him in, that like where he's in more than just maybe a few scenes, I really love him as the dad in Happiest Season from 2020. I really love that. And then Legally Blonde, which you said. And I think if there's one essential Victor Garber movie, it's Titanic.
Of course.
Right? Like, which he's that it's a small role in that movie, but it's a very important role. And he made a huge impression on me when I saw that movie.
Oh yeah,
it was more than just DiCaprio, Winslet, you know, and like the main principal actors in that film. I mean, he really makes the most of his moments. That scene where he's like, Titanic will flounder. Like that's the part where you go, oh shit, like this is serious.
Yeah, right? No, he's as the architect. Yeah, it's a lovely thing. Like the thing I like most about Titanic are the emotional beats. Like yes, like Cameron directed the hell out of it and like created new technology for it, but it has stood the test of time because of its emotional beats, especially as they're sinking. Like we all remember, you know, the old couple curling up next to bed in bed next to each other.
Them.
And it will be out by the time this episode comes out, but as we're recording this, we are still a few weeks away from the 3D re-release of Titanic in theaters, which I cannot wait. Yes, he has remastered it for 3D, which I know a lot of people won't like.
Well, they'll probably have options to see it in 2D
if he allows them to.
If he, because 3D movies now have that option, you can go.
But the Avatar 1 re-release, at least in Seattle, did not have the 2D option.
Oh, I didn't see it. I thought there was a 2D option in September for that.
I could be entirely wrong.
Yeah, so that will have this episode's dropping in early March, so that would have I think that would have come out Valentine's Day weekend. We're getting a new Titanic. I don't know how long that's playing for, but I don't know. It's my mom's favorite movie, Marcus. So maybe I'll take her to it.
Well, and here's the thing. Also, like I saw the original. I saw the original run like a week late because I was like on vacation, and we had Christmas with my family. And then my cousin spoiled the ending, so I've never seen it pure. So I'm going to try to see it pure.
What happens to Jack at the end? Before you
just like, isn't it so sad when he dies? I'm like, freaking. Man.
Yeah,
because she lived in San Francisco and, you know, they get movies earlier than the East Bay.
It's like when I spent the entire summer of 1998 trying not to get Halloween H2O spoiled for me. And right before I left to see it, I read a post that said the ending is a head rolling surprise.
Oh, no, don't make jokes about spoilers.
I left to go. I went,
oh. And
I hate when something's spoiled before you see it.
And I also want to shout out Victor Garber's TV work in addition to Annie. So there's Cinderella, the Whitney Houston Brandy one. He's good on the Orville, the Seth MacFarlane Star Trek show.
Oh, right.
Speaking of him singing, there was a show with Johnny Lee Miller called Eli Stone, where he has like a brain tumor that makes him see the world in musicals.
Oh.
So it's a lot of singing.
That sounds good. Up his alley.
Yeah, it was 2 seasons during the aughts. And then he's in the televised production of Neil Simon's Laughter on the 23rd Floor, which is about working on the Sid Caesar show.
Okay.
And that's very fun. The play's better than the movie, but the movie is a stacked cast.
Yeah, if you scroll through his IMDb, he's got so many 1-episode credits on great stuff, right? Like you get Schitt's Creek he was on. Oh, I really liked him in the new Tales of the City on Netflix from 2019. Right. He was in that. That was really good. But he's in like 1 episode of Modern Family, 1 episode of the show that he is like most recently known for, I would say, is the not Arrow. It's the what was that?
Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which I think he did like 3 seasons of, and my partner and I watched that stuff, and those were kind of fun shows to get started with. But then when it's like entering season 9, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of out. I'm kind of done. But he's not in the show now. He had an out. That's all I'll say. He had an out in the show. But I watched his last episode, and it's very moving. Like the last episode he did of that show, and he did 1 episode of The Simpsons. Like he is a working actor. Although if you look at the Coming Soon, he has nothing in the works right now. He's probably
doing stage stuff, man. He's still on Broadway.
Is he doing something on the stage right now? That's what
Not
we'll
not as
assume.
of this moment, but I'm sure he has something in development or in
Yeah.
workshop or just in the works.
But until Godspell, Marcus, I was not aware that Victor Garber was on film in the early 70s. So that was a nice surprise. I really enjoyed seeing him this young in a movie. That was fun. I really like that about it.
Oh, he's beautiful in this.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. All right, that takes us to the end here, Marcus. As we wrap up here, tell our listeners where they can find you online and anything you'd like to promote. Now would be the time.
Yes, you can find me at marcusgorman.com. I am the founder and editor of 10 Years Ago, a blog where people review movies on its 10th anniversary. I cover film and theater for the Ticket at the Seattle Times, and you can just theticket.seattletimes.com. I program films for, let's see, 3 different festivals now. So Seattle International Film Festival, which is coming up in May, Make Believe Seattle, the inaugural genre festival, which is coming up at the end of March in Seattle. I am writing hooks for Cleveland International Film Festival, and I am pre-screening for Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita, Kansas. And I have plays coming up. I have a film version of one of my plays being edited now as we speak, and we're going to do some reshoots in next weekend as we're recording this, and I will have more information perhaps the next time we talk. I think that's everything I'm doing. I'm sure I'm forgetting. Go to the Grand Illusion Cinema in Seattle, where I volunteer in concessions and projection.
Oh, cool. Do you find time to sleep?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a freelancer, so I can sleep whenever the hell I want.
That's a lot. That's awesome. I love all the work you're doing, Marcus. It's so great. Do you get time to see a lot of the new movies when you're watching like so many films for the festivals and things? Like you're able to kind of catch up on Oscar films and that kind of
God,
thing?
yes.
Okay.
I don't really start like programming instead of just going through submissions until like January, February. So I've hit most of the Oscar stuff.
Gotcha.
No, I still go to the movies almost every day. But like when I become the publications associate editor at SIF, that's a 9 to 5 for like 8 to 10 weeks. And at that point, a couple things will drop off, but usually things like examples of ones I had to watch on video are like Shazam and King Kong Skull Island. Not big deals. Both movies I enjoy, but I'm like, I wasn't upset to miss them in theaters.
Yeah. We are able to move on with our life.
Yes.
Well, thanks for being here again, Marcus. Thanks to all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, for all things Oscars. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.